limited information, no blueprints, but had opportunities to work with people innovating to stop the spread of the virus. The Accelerator labs have powered UNDP for fast action. UNDP Sudan identified insights about behavioral patterns such as panic buying and stockpiling.
The most exciting part of our project is that we designed it and we did the data collection in just under 2 days.
UNDP Ethiopia used foresight to imagine how COVID-19 will impact industrial parks.
Here in Ethiopia, we used foresight to understand how the newly developed industrial parks would be affected by the pandemic.
UNDP Philippines used real-time data visualization to help assess the impact of the pandemic on excluded citizens.
In the Philippines, we used messenger chatbots and other digital tools in tandem with community organizing to give the vulnerable a greater voice in the assessment of the socio-economic impacts of COVID-19.
UNDP Argentina helped design financial solutions for small entrepreneurs impacted by the crisis.
Pay in Advance is a social media campaign from the Argentine Accelerator lab. It encouraged consumers to pay in advance goods and services so they can get them after the lockdown ends.
The way Accelerator labs apply cutting-edge behavioral insights, support real-time data, and create future-proof policy advice is becoming an integral part of UNDP's contribution to the UN-wide response to COVID-19 and its economic legacy. Looking towards the future, the world's largest network of labs is growing and looking for partnerships with governments, businesses, and academia. Join us. UNDP set out to build the world's largest and fastest learning network on sustainable development challenges. In less than a year, we did just that. 60 lab teams covering 78 countries are now up and running in UNDP offices, doing development differently. We accelerate learning by creating actionable intelligence and testing solutions. We strengthen capabilities by supporting decision makers to explore, experiment, and grow portfolios. We adapt to change by expanding the way UNDP invests, thinks about, and delivers development. We look for what's next by scanning the horizon. The network is comprised of fast and curious labbers. 72% are brand new to the UN system. 24% are returning to their home countries to solve development challenges. 63% have experience in ethnographic research. Our award-winning teams are helping UNDP reimagine sustainable development for the 21st century. In this time of planetary crisis, when best practices don't always exist, we need to learn what works and what doesn't for sustainable development problems in a matter of weeks, not years. That's what this agile network is about. When COVID-19 hit, governments had limited information, no blueprints, but had opportunities to work with people innovating to stop the spread of the virus. The Accelerator labs have powered UNDP for fast action. UNDP Sudan identified insights about behavioral patterns such as panic buying and stockpiling.
The most exciting part of our project is that we designed it and we did the data collection in just under 2 days.
UNDP Ethiopia used foresight to imagine how COVID-19 will impact industrial parks.
Here in Ethiopia, we used foresight to understand how the newly developed industrial parks would be affected by the pandemic.
UNDP Philippines used real-time data visualization to help assess the impact of the pandemic on excluded citizens.
In the Philippines, we used messenger chatbots and other digital tools in tandem with community organizing to give the vulnerable a greater voice in the assessment of the socio-economic impacts of COVID-19.
UNDP Argentina helped design financial solutions for small entrepreneurs impacted by the crisis.
Pay in Advance is a social media campaign from the Argentine Accelerator lab. It encourages consumers to pay in advance goods and services so they can get them after the lockdown ends.
The way Accelerator labs apply cutting-edge behavioral insights, support real-time data, and create future-proof policy advice is becoming an integral part of UNDP's contribution to the UN-wide response to COVID-19 and its economic legacy. Looking towards the future, the world's largest network of labs is growing and looking for partnerships with governments, businesses, and academia. Join us. UNDP set out to build the world's largest and fastest learning network on sustainable development challenges. In less than a year, we did just that. 60 lab teams covering 78 countries are now up and running in UNDP offices, doing development differently. We accelerate learning by creating actionable intelligence and testing solutions. We strengthen capabilities by supporting decision makers to explore, experiment, and grow portfolios. We adapt to change by expanding the way UNDP invests, thinks about, and delivers development. We look for what's next by scanning the horizon. The network is comprised of fast and curious labbers. 72% are brand new to the UN system. 24% are returning to their home countries to solve development challenges. 63% have experience in ethnographic research. Our award-winning teams are helping UNDP reimagine sustainable development for the 21st century. In this time of planetary crisis, when best practices don't always exist, we need to learn what works and what doesn't for sustainable development problems in a matter of weeks, not years. That's what this agile network is about. When COVID-19 hit, governments had limited information, no blueprints, but had opportunities to work with people innovating to stop the spread of the virus. The Accelerator labs have powered UNDP for fast action. UNDP Sudan identified insights about behavioral patterns such as panic buying and stockpiling.
The most exciting part of our project is that we designed it and we did the data collection in just under 2 days.
UNDP Ethiopia used foresight to imagine how COVID-19 will impact industrial parks.
Here in Ethiopia, we used foresight to understand how the newly developed industrial parks would be affected by the pandemic.
We can start. So, hello everybody, welcome, thank you for coming back, and greetings to all those who are following us online. First of all, I would like to thank my fellow panelists today for coming, for being with us, for joining us on this occasion. We have been talking a lot about accelerating development, accelerating reform, through basically two things: system transformation, innovation. So this has been a topic for today, and we have heard from very inspiring speakers. But I think the very important point is about creating the future. Because if we simply follow the trend, the future doesn't look bright for any of us. So yes, we do need to transform, we need to do something about it, but it's also the question how we do it. And to us, it seems that system transformation and innovation are the way to go. We have heard how countries and international organizations, UNDP, are working on transforming themselves. We have heard success stories from Israel and Estonia, the example of UNDP, and there are some common ingredients, I would say, to the successes or to the success stories. And let me start with the vision. There is always an idea, there is a vision for a country or society to follow. The second ingredient is enormous commitment, energy, belief it will work, or as my colleague from UNDP put it, the bold choices or accepting the risk. The third ingredient is, because of the increasing complexity of the challenges, is that we really need to work on multiple fronts if we want to see the change. It's not sufficient just to go for one solution, to go one track. We need to work on multiple tracks. We need to engage many, and we need to not to look for one solution, but basically to look for multiple ones. And something that really stuck with me, we need open minds and open data. And my guests will definitely be talking about that today. Open minds to really look into the future and to create it, not to be stuck in the past, in the legacy, as some people were mentioning. And we need long-term approach. We need feedback loops. We need to constantly learn, because we simply cannot afford just to aim and go where we are there. We need to constantly embrace what's going on around us and adjust accordingly. And I think most importantly, we need leadership. We need people. We need those who will start and who will actually implement the change. And I'm really happy to start from that last point and surround myself to prove that point with amazing 4 people. 3 people are physically here with me, 1 is virtually, and they have all been doing the transformation. They have been transforming their lives and lives of the people around them, and they have done some amazing work. They have been initiating transformation on many different fronts: communication, digital economy, environment. What connects them is they are all from North Macedonia, and 3 of them are working on transforming the North Macedonia, while 1 is working on transforming international institutions from within. They are here with us to share their stories, to empower us, and to really show that it's doable, that it's possible, if you put your mind to it and if you enlist support for it. I would like to start with Costa Petrov. He is an international entrepreneur with 15+ years of experience, global experience in startup and business development and strategic communication, author of 4 books. But what's probably most important for the subject today, he is the managing director of the Fund for Innovation and Technology Development, and as Prime Minister mentioned, he is responsible for, or empowered to, position North Macedonia as the region's startup and innovation hub. So, Costa, we would like to hear from you about what we have done so far and the vision. What were some of the critical factors of success and impacts that you are proud of?
Thank you so much for the invitation. It feels so good to be live at an event and not on Zoom. Of course, we have to fully dress up. But first of all, congratulations on this great initiative. Congratulations to UNDP. We are here to cooperate with you and make the much needed changes in our country. As you mentioned, for the past 3.5 months, I've been the managing director for the Fund of Innovation and Technology Development. For many, it's an institution that gives grants, but I was hired and I was brought in the fund to change that picture, to move it from an institution that gives grants to a partner of the private sector, and something that I'm really proud of, partner of the startup community. Now, if you look at the Macedonian economy and the help that it's been given, the categories that exist are micro, medium, and micro, small, and medium companies. So there hasn't been a real strategy when it comes to the startup ecosystem and a startup development. So at the Fund for Innovation, the first thing we did when I became my director is we created the country's first ever National Startup Council. It's 5 people now, but we plan to add more and more people as we develop the strategy for the country and for the fund. The whole idea with the National Startup Council is to create a policy change paper, but also to get involved in all the law changes that are needed to transform the Macedonian startup community. Because finances are one thing. I believe that if you're a passionate founder, if you have a great idea, you will find finances somehow. But the laws are another thing. And even though I'm a representative of the government, I must say that many of the laws are very feudal, old, not relevant. So our goal as the fund, as the National Startup Council, is to push the law changes. So I'm proud that the National Startup Council has already done the ideas for the change of the innovation law. We have a member that is part of the law for social entrepreneurship. Together with the Ministry of Interior, we're working on a digital nomad program. So we're really involved in all the important parts when it comes to startup development. One thing that I think it's really important, and I'm really happy that we have speakers from Estonia, from Israel, and from all of these amazing countries that we can learn so much. But I'm a firm believer that we have to create our own story. We have to take all of this amazing experience from other people and ask ourselves, what is North Macedonia unique selling point? What will make us different? And I think we are on the right path to achieve that. I am all about implementing new trends, but I'm more about let's be the first in something. So what I'm really proud of is that we are in the final stages of registering our own investment fund, something that we've been talking about for 4 years. And finally, this year, we are entering the final stage. So hopefully, don't spread this news to other countries because we want to be the first ones. But hopefully, by the end of the year, we will have our own investment fund. We will start with our own funding, and of course, we'll continue with fundraising from private and institutional investors. But having our own investment fund, I think it will change the whole investment game in the country. Also, will give a bigger push to the banks to be more cooperative. Because the sad truth is, if you're a startup in Macedonia, if you have amazing idea, most of the banks will tell you, sorry, but why don't you put your parents' apartment as a collateral? Why don't you put your own apartment as a collateral? The funding is really hard to get. And for many of the startups, the Fund for Innovation and the accelerators are the only way to get funding for it, for the idea and for the business plan. So other than investing in new financial instruments, I think what is really missing in our country is that we have amazing ideas, but we are not so good in implementing those ideas. So I think you will agree with me that mentoring is of extreme importance. So at the fund, for example, we completely revamped the mentoring. For the first time, we are introducing mentoring for potential clients, mentoring for rejected clients, because it's all about knowledge sharing. As I said, you will find the finances somehow, but when it comes to the knowledge, you need to learn from someone that has been through what you're going through currently. And I'm really proud. Actually, one thing that I'm happy about COVID-19, even though it's very hard to say that there is something positive about all of this, is that for the first time, government is seriously talking about startups. And it's so exciting to see all of these amazing people like Nina, like Gorian, who have done so much without the government's help, because the startup system has been developing even without the government's help. So our whole idea is, if we are together into this, if we sit on the same table, we can really create the change that we need. As the president said at the closing speech in the parliament last year, Macedonia's way is the startup way. So I firmly believe that in the next couple of months, next year, we will see massive changes in the Macedonian startup ecosystem. I'm proud of the amazing work that the startups are doing, that the young people are doing, and little encouragement to everyone, share your successes. I know we live in a country where you don't talk about the sex because you don't want success. No, sorry. Also, you don't talk about that, but because we live in a country where success, is considered, don't talk about it so your neighbors don't find out about your success. But in order to show a different side of the country, because there is a side of young Macedonian people creating their own businesses, international businesses. Yes, there is the side of people leaving the country, and then something that we all have to work on, but it's only one side of the story. Let's celebrate the amazing startups we have. Let's celebrate the amazing people we have, and I think this is the only way to achieve and to create our own story, because I think after 30 years, it's time that we have our own story. Yeah, so that's about it.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about the mistake I did.
Thank you, Costa, for sharing your experience. Thank you for being inspirational for a lot of youngsters to come. But I think if I judge, I'm just like putting some notes. It's about building coalition. It's about getting the knowledge on board through the steering committee. It's about creating enabling environments through changing the laws. It's about being the first. But also it's about reaching out and partnership with the private sector. If I compare that to what we've heard from the champions, I think you are very much on the right track, and I wish you good luck and success with what you're doing. The second speaker, Nina Angelovska. I think everybody remembers her by the most recent title of the Minister of Finance of the Government of the Republic of North Macedonia in the period of 2019 to 2020. But before that, actually, Nina was very active in the business sector for 10 years as co-founder of Gruper MK, the leading e-commerce platform. And just if I mention that due to the contribution from the team that she had, there was a 350 increase in sales, and she educated together with the team thousands of customers and businesses. Basically, it means revamping the whole sector and creating it from the scratch. She was named as Forbes 30 under 30. She was recognized by UNCTAD as one of the 7 global e-trade for women advocates. So I think this speaks volumes about what Nina has done so far, and we really look forward to hearing from you about your success story, about what were the key ingredients and what were some of the impacts that you are proud.
Thank you very much, Sanya. Thank you for having me here. It's really a pleasure to be discussing such an important topic that is very difficult but as well magical, systems transformation. And congratulations to UNCTAD for the Accelerator Lab. I hope there will be great cooperation and impact for the progress of our country. As we're discussing about systems transformation, the word itself, to transform, means to make a marked change in the shape and form or the appearance of something. So, as Sanya mentioned, in 2011, when I was 21, when the idea was being prepared, but 22 when we launched Gruper, I was always excited about change, and back then that was to change the e-commerce market and to transform the e-commerce market in our country. And the hard work and passion that we put was actually recognized, and Gruper is known as the game changer of the e-commerce market. As you mentioned in your intro, we educated thousands of people to make their first online transaction. We educated them about opening an email, opening Facebook account, what is a CVC code on the back of the payment card, and we helped hundreds of businesses embrace and enter the digital world. So if I turn to the other side, I guess I'm one of the maybe rare people that I don't know if it's the word lucky enough to have experience in the private and in the public sector. Now on the other side, the motive to join the government, when I was invited by the Prime Minister, was actually to be able to make a change, to be able to transform something from the inside, as I thought it would be easier to transform something from the inside. It turned out it isn't. I was heading the public finances during the biggest crisis of all times, and had to make lots of decisions, fast decisions, and at the same time try to make a change wherever it was possible. So some solutions that we launched during my mandate that have something to do with systems transformation were the 3 tools that highly increase the fiscal transparency and that leads to greater accountability of the public institutions. Like, for instance, the open finance, where we opened the treasury for the public, or the other tool was capital expenditures, with which we gave the public a tool to be able to see the capital expenditures by budget users so that they make a pressure to the budget users to have a better results. And the third one was the tool called public debt. And this was actually a result that came out during the technical government due to the lots of fake news and misinformation about the public debt. And instead of focusing on the negative energy and trying to reply and respond, we put our energy into building a new tool to try to present the public debt of the country, all the borrowings, everything we were doing in a very easy, understandable way, and it was also a way to fight the misinformation. So apart these three tools, one of the measures, COVID measures, that I'm really proud of and has something to do with transformation is the domestic payment card, the measure that we launched in a month. And this was a measure that was not only designed, but as well implemented in a completely new way that our country so far hasn't had the chance or hasn't recognized. So there were, of course, the what and why and the how when we were designing the measure, but it was more of a tough challenge on responding with the limited fiscal space, responding and trying to get the maximal results in terms of how do we select the target group, how do we make a measure that will have the greater impact on the economy, meaning increase the private consumption to the affected sectors, and by that try to mitigate the GDP decline that we were expecting. And how do we, in the whole this picture, create as well an impact to the system, meaning contribute to the cashless society vision that we had, and meaning try to design a measure with which people would not have to go into fill out forms and go into the institutions because of the COVID measures and trying to protect their health. So on top of this, 5 institutions were included in this measure, and a very well coordination was needed. And when we are speaking about systems, there are configuration of many interrelated parts, and in this case, it was a tough challenge to coordinate all these institutions and then also coordinate it with the private sector, with the banks. But this is a project that we are very proud of, that gave its impact, and it results. Many merchants installed for the first time their POS terminal, which was a side effect and a more systematic effect out of a short-term measure. 300,000 people got their payment cards. Some of them did not have a payment card or were not used to using or paying with a payment card. And we practically made a measure that directed, and people have spent this amount to the most affected sectors, this support they were given. So from the outside, it might seem like a very simple measure, but this is just an example of how we should do things and how I hope in future we say, okay, this is something that we could do with the open data, with the data that we have from the systems, and we can apply this for future, and we don't have to make the life harder of our citizens, but as the Estonian example says, the question is, how do we make it easier? How do we create a better user experience? How do we see our citizens as our clients and customers who need to be happy? So for now, I will stop with this example, and later on, I guess I'll have some opportunity to share more.
Thank you, Nina, very much for sharing your story. I think this very much speaks to the points that were mentioned by Tavi Kotka about importance of connecting the private sector, and not only connecting with the private sector, but adopting within the administration the spirit and the thinking and the logic of the private sector. So, Nina, thank you very much on behalf of Macedonian citizens for bringing this private sector mentality and spirit, and doing so much in a short period of time. The third panelist today is, I think I would like to say, a living testimony of what you get if you have software engineer, consultant, entrepreneur, and eco-activist in one person. So you definitely have, not all-inclusive, but a lot included in one person, and you have a result which is personally for Goran very flattering, European Young Innovator Award for 2020, and nomination under 30 years of age, so congratulations for that. But you know, also many followers on the air care, something that concerns directly the quality of life of people, and for which I'm sure your citizens are very grateful for raising the awareness about the air pollution, creating an app where they can directly see what's the situation. But I think it's also a testimony that one person can actually demonstrate how data can be used, because that data was sitting for years in a specific place, even publicly available, but until one person put it all together into something which was a meaningful information, the transformation and raising of the public awareness didn't happen. So Goran, thank you very much for that. I won't mention a lot of other things that you have done, like being the IT manager in the booking.com and all of your personal achievements. We are here to hear the story from you directly about how you did this amazing work, what were the critical ingredients of success, and what was the impact, and maybe even what's next on your list.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, first of all, everyone. You mentioned that one person can change like system transformation within or from, actually for me, outside of the government. And that's a myth that I want to tackle right now. A lot of people, at least when I talk to them and say, hey, you know what, I don't have time for this. I'm not sure how you're achieving it, or you're Superman or something like that. And to my disappointment as well, I do not have superpowers. I wish I did. But like all people that really try to do this, we only have 24 hours in a day. What I'm trying to say here is that throughout the years as an eco-activist, I had to target, especially find holes in this data that we're talking about and make sure that this data is available to the public. I'll start from the beginning. When I was a kid, it was, I think, 2011-ish, something like that. I thought we were joking with our friends that outside it smells like winter. Winter would come, it's like, oh, it's the smell of winter, it's popular. No, that was the smell of smog. But it hurts now thinking retrospectively that we were happy about that smell, which was unfortunate. But as a bored university student, I was trying to figure out how to make apps for my phone. And by doing that, I actually stumbled upon the data from the Ministry of Environment about the air quality outside. And I think at that point we had 17, 18 measuring stations throughout the country. And I analyzed this data, I ran a couple of tests on it, and every time it would give me huge numbers. And I thought, okay, I'm mistaken here. There's something wrong with my calculations. This can't be true. I mean, we're talking about 20 times over EU limits at some points, 4 times over Beijing. It's impossible to do this, so it's most likely my fault. And after a while, you realize it's not my fault. Those are the real numbers. This is a real issue. But what I think hurt more was, why weren't more people talking about this? Why wasn't this a bigger issue? Why weren't we out on the streets complaining about this? And I realized that while this data was out there, like you said, and available in public, it was being presented in kind of an older fashion way, somewhere on a website that's somewhere dug deep within 4 links clicking, and suddenly a lot of people were just jumping over it. My mission was to take this open data, as other open data exists out there as well, and make it very easy and accessible to people out there. We all have mobile phones, so why not make an app that you can just click and check out, hey, this is what the air pollution looks like outside. And even today, the sun lies. We're all out there enjoying the time. We'll take our masks off, finally we can breathe. No, outside is actually very polluted. So the whole point was to raise awareness and open our eyes that, hey, there's this issue ongoing. The beautiful thing about this was that it's not a fight that I can do myself. So of course you needed to find partners. You can find partners in other eco-activists and organizations. You can find partners within citizens, but you also have to find partners within the government. There is no way to system transform this whole problem that we have with air pollution without partnering up from all sides, because in the end, like I say always, we all breathe the same air. We have had collaborations with government institutions. Some have been great, others we can work on hopefully more, but it is a change that is also starting to happen from within, and this is something that excites me. I spent 4 years in the Netherlands. I worked there, I lived there, I did my master's there, but at the unfortunate start of the whole pandemic, I actually decided to move back and focus on trying to do this systemic change here with all the knowledge that I have gained so far there. And I'm happy to see that more and more government institutions are responding positively to either opening data, making sure that everything is digitalized, and moving forward from an older manner where we had everything on paper. So I have to be truly happy that Air Care as an app, which is now, by the way, started off very locally and now is available in 45 countries, and I think over 500,000 users. So it grew quite out of the expected bounds of our small country. But it made a lasting impact both locally here, and people realized air pollution is a thing now. We have to solve this because we're breathing in this poison every winter, unfortunately. But it also woke up government institutions and said, hey, look, we can no longer ignore this problem, and we really have to find a way to tackle this, not by ourselves, but together with the whole community.
Thank you, Gorian, very much for sharing your experience. And now we move to Nebi, who is joining us virtually, but you can see him well on the screen, and we are grateful, Nebi, for your patience. Nebi is a North Macedonian citizen, but he has been most of the time abroad, working abroad. And basically, what we have been talking and mentioning a lot today, digitalization, he is turning it into reality, into really time-saving, cost-effectiveness, almost transforming the organization. And the organization that he is currently working for is the Green Climate Fund. Massive impact, massive resources, and a global organization. So the challenge of making that organization fully digital, reaching to its users, is huge. So Nebi, we would like to hear from you about that experience. What were some of the critical elements of success, and what is the impact? Thank you very much once more for joining us. And being patient, I know it's not the time of the day where you are, which is the most productive for you, so we very much appreciate your presence.
First of all, thanks for having me. Happy to join you here from South Korea. And I also want to thank this great panel. So let me start by giving you a little bit of background to set the context. As Sanya said, the Green Climate Fund is a multi-billion-dollar fund and the largest dedicated climate fund in the world, financing climate action in developing countries. So when COVID-19 hit South Korea around this time last year, most of our workforce ended up working remotely from over 90 countries, as well as other organizations around the globe struggle to maintain business continuity, let alone to implement transformational changes that we are talking today. So we, at the Green Climate Fund, with our partners, we proved it's possible to maintain climate ambition in the era of COVID, which was the main objective of the fund at that time. So making sure that one crisis will not display another one. And what I mean by that is both the developing and developed world had huge expectations from us. On the one hand, the developing countries feared that they would be left vulnerable more than ever to climate disasters. On the other hand, the developed countries were concerned whether the fund could operate normally during COVID pandemic. And as you can see in this uncertain world, the fund approved $2 billion in funding for those most affected by climate change. So the question is, how did we manage this massive undertaking? Well, before the pandemic, we embraced the digital first strategy as part of our digital transformation journey. We laid out the groundwork with robust digital infrastructure. We digitalized business capabilities to support organizational resilience, which was very important during COVID. And we invested in emerging technologies. So the truth is that the technology can solve all of our problems, but we can't solve our problems without the technology. So this really demonstrated that we can experiment, we can imagine and innovate, and we can transform challenges into opportunities. So when the turmoil started, we were moving to the curve of the exponential growth. And after years of efforts to make the institution fully digital, the Green Climate Fund was in a position to deliver in a scale. So after all, no one thought that multiple years worth of digital transformation could happen in a few months. And as a result, our ecosystem of more than 100 implementation partners, including the UNDP, we coordinated the disbursement of $2 billion funding almost entirely digitally. So today, we are not planning for one future. We need to plan for many possible future scenarios. And predicting the future, especially during the challenging times like this, it's really, really hard. And as we come out of this pandemic, I think this will be a crucial time for organizations to create the future or even to compose the digital future by adapting to these new technologies, focusing on resilience and agility that these interesting times demand. I mean, as you can see, our journey is still ongoing and we have started to see the results of our initial efforts. And I believe we still have a long way to go.
Thank you for sharing your story. I think what speaks to some of the points raised before is to be proactive. Because a lot of the institutions, the big problem with the institutions is they're simply reacting, and even some societies or systems, is they're simply reacting to change. While actually they should be creating the future or creating the desired reality while there are calm times, so they are not forced to do that while the crisis is ongoing. So thank you very much for sharing your experience. I would like to continue with the same question to all of you, which is, what are your key takeaways? What are some of the lessons learned? And is there anything that you would do differently because of that? I think it's very important. This is how we learn, so I want you to share your learning with the audience. Thank you.
I've been in the fund only 4 months, so I still haven't made major mistakes that I would have done differently. But connected to what everyone was saying and what I feel, there are several things actually that are really important. First, the government, as the private sector, has problems with attracting the right talent because, let's say, the reputation of being part of a government, of being part of a political party, of being politically part of something has, I'm trying to make this politically correct. For example, me and Nina entered politics at the same time, and I know the pressure that we felt. But it's really important to have right people from the real sector in the key government sectors, because people from the real sector may not have the political experience, which is much needed in politics, but we have the work ethic, we have the vision, we have the experience. I'm not saying that the government should start functioning as a private sector because it's very different from the private sector. But in order for all of us, for each government, for the Macedonian government to achieve its goals, we need the right people and the right talent. And this is the key. Also, what is really important is that we are all of, and this is the most cliche sentence of 2020, we are all in this together. But really, the private sector, the government, the academia, if we want to see transformation, if we want to see innovation, we have to work together. Yes, the fund is investing heavily in the innovation of the private sector, but what is the investment that is done in digitalization of the government sector? Because we've been talking about it for a really long time, but I think we need more serious budgeting in the government institution in order to achieve this kind of digitalization. We are now halfway through in terms of some institutions have budget, others don't. But I think as a government, we need to be more precise, and especially in the budgeting for next year, put a really important budget for digitalization of the process, because people don't have the nerves anymore. They want everything to be done by click. So it's not something that maybe we will do, but it's something that we must do. But again, it's a combination of having the right people, of creating trust, creating partnerships, and hopefully as a country we will get there in the coming period, because if we want to succeed as a country, if we want to create that story that we all want to create, we have to work together. The government can do it by itself, the private sector can do it by itself, the academia cannot do it by themselves. So we have to sit down together, and we have to do this fast, because as someone that comes from the private sector, I want things done like this, and when you work in the government, it's like, no, you cannot do that, wait the loss, and you're sitting there and you're like, God, you're having a mini nervous breakdown. But I think as a country, we have to, long-term strategies are really important, but I think right now we need 1 week strategies, 1 month strategies. We have to do things really, really fast. Now is the right moment to do a quick transformation. I think we are on the train, but the train is moving really fast and we need to like hold tight to the train in order not to fall off. But it's really, really important to take advantage of this amazing opportunity. And the last thing, which is my message to everyone, the innovation of the country also depends on the cooperation with international organizations. Sometimes I have a feeling that a lot of institutions are doing the same things. You know, you see like 5 different organizations doing the same thing and we are not being coordinated. So what is really important is that also the international association, the embassies, we work all together to achieve the same goal. Because only if we work together, we can really, really create this own story that we all crave for. So, and this lab and this event is just a proof that if we work together, you know, this is achievable. And I'm sure that in a very short period of time, everything that we are talking about will become our reality. And I would like to use this opportunity to thank people like Zoran who, unlike many, they're not complaining, but they're looking for the solution. And the government, I mean, I'm not saying this is the position of the government, it's really important when you criticize to give solution to the problem. So Zoran is an example when someone from a private sector, with his own experience, by his own advice, he's really created a much needed change in our country. So bravo for everything that you're doing, and bravo for what all young people in Macedonia are doing to change what this country is all about.
Thank you, Costa. For Nina and Zoran, the same question. Lessons learned, takeaways, if anything you would be doing differently.
I think that it's, you know, everybody wants things to be different, everybody complains, but nobody wants to change. So that's if we are speaking about our own small habits, we do not change them, and there's something easy to do, and let alone to change a system and to change something as robust as the public sector or the system that has been there for years. So metaphorically, when you were giving your intro talk, Sanya, I think that this story would tackle everything with just one metaphor regarding the system. So I imagine, let's say that we are all picturing a very big rock that's standing in a village, and it's been there for many, many years. Houses were built around this rock. It's blocking the views of the houses. It's blocking the sun. The flowers are not blossoming. The cars cannot pass very well, so everybody is complaining all the day to other neighbors, but nobody does nothing about this big rock. And one day there is this enthusiastic group with the good leadership skills that comes and says, we're going to dislocate this rock and we're going to put it in another place where it will be a rock climbing park, let's say, for the kids to play. And they make this strategy, they get our people on board, and they go one day, all excited, with the ropes and everything, to try to begin their intervention. And you know, the rock has been there for many years, so there's an indentation in the ground around it. And they do their intervention, they're pushing the rock, and suddenly they realize that there is a whole group of people pushing back from the other side. So this is the people that are resisting the change. It can be, regardless, part of the institutions, it can be the administration, it can be the people, it can be the opposition, it can be the position, regardless of who it is. But these people are not onboarded. They do not see the vision of this other group, and they are resisting change. Sometimes they don't even know why. And so these enthusiastic people does not lose the enthusiasm, but they do another set of strategy on how to get these people on board so that they all see the vision, what will happen once the stone is removed. And they all come one day and push, and they make a progress, and the stone is dislocated just a bit, and they say, okay, let's take a rest, let's go home and come back in 3 days and then continue. And they go back to celebrate the success, what they have made, and they go back, and the stone is back to its previous position. This is because systems have this natural tendency to go back to the normal unless there is a mechanism to keep pushing, to try them for the change to stick. And this is what will happen with our systems if we don't have a very clear vision about the future and we know where we're going. So we have the people pushing on the same direction, maybe some left or right, but we know the vision that there is. And I think the key question would be, how do we excite people about change? How do we see change as something good? How do we realize that progress is not possible without change? And if we only manage to do this, I think this is the most powerful characteristic that a society can have. To be adaptable, to be able to change, but to be excited and happy about a change. So I will finish off with one thing that I remembered while Costa was speaking, and this is connected to your brochure. It says the fast and curious, and this is the private sector. And I think that from what he was saying, this is not my words, but the challenge is how to make the slow and furious public sector into the fast and curious private sector. So I think there is a magical combination, and there are a lot of things ahead of us. We are the enthusiasts here, I guess. We will keep pushing, and we're looking forward to a better future after COVID. Not back to normal, but better normal.
Thank you, Nina. Gorian, to you, the same.
Thank you. I would give 3 points. I will talk about at least the key takeaways of what I've seen about time, data, and attitude. I've done this for 6 years now. AirCare was born in 2014. It's been going on. System transition takes time. It really does. It won't happen overnight. And if you try to do this, don't get discouraged that it's not working immediately. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe you need the right people to come to the right place where they will actually seriously take this to go forward. But do not give up the fight. System transitions will take time, and this is something that you should keep in the back of our minds. After 6 years, we are starting to see positive results. But if we quit after the first couple months and say, you know what, this is not working, that is probably not going to achieve anything. On the second point is data. You must have data to know if your system transformation is working. Every time we go out and we have debates regarding air quality, at least in my opinion, I go there ready with data. Why? Because data is the truth. Data is the fact. There's no opinion when it comes to data. I could go out and I could say, you know what, this is terrible, you're doing this wrong, and I don't like it. I mean, that's great, but that is my own opinion. But if I go out there with data and say, you know, we see trends. This is the trend. It's showing from year to year. This is getting better and this is getting worse. Now we know where to focus on. So having data on your side as an ally really, really helps changing the systems both from the inside and from the out. And as Costa mentioned, the attitude. I think that is probably the most important thing that I'm also trying to help change within the activism community. We can have a negative attitude. We can. We're activists. We're going to be angry. We're going to be yelling. We're going to be screaming and pointing fingers. Sure. But that probably would not bring a lot of change. And let me show this through a very simple example. A couple years ago, I was at my grandma's place for dinner. And we would sit there, and my grandma and my grandpa, they would complain, you know, the building and the hallways in the building, they have garbage and cigarette butts and stuff like this is terrible. So I asked them, okay, what did you do about it? Well, nothing. They're all crazy here in this building. They'll keep doing this. So I said, okay, let's see what the problem is. Well, maybe one of the things is that there's no trash can anywhere in a 2-kilometer radius of the building. So why not put one? I ran off to the store and I bought a unfortunately expensive trash can, and I put it right next to the door. I'm like, okay, great. Here's the trash can, and then people will throw trash in the trash can. Problem solved. My grandma kept begging me, like, don't leave it there. You know, it'll get stolen. No, it won't. The door's locks, and like, you know, everyone here. 24 hours it took for the trash can to get stolen. And I could have, at this point, quit and say, you know what, you guys are all crazy. I'm not going to do this. But I insisted on pushing this change through. I'm like, no, we still have to change this. So I did what I was supposed to do at the start. I went to the normal grocery store and I got an empty box that they had, and I just put the box there. And I put a nice sign with a smiley face, like for a cleaner household and a cleaner building. And people started throwing trash in the trash can. Took a couple days, and the trash can, someone threw it out. Someone threw the box out. But this is the time where I actually saw the system transformation. My grandpa and grandma got angry. They said, no, this was a good initiative. So they went to a store and they put another box there. And I said, no. They started patrolling the hallways, making sure that the box is still there. And if the box was not there, they would bring a box. A Couple of years down the road, I go every weekend to my grandma's place and the box is still there. People are throwing garbage in the box and it's clean. So maybe it's a very small system transformation, but because we were consistent and trying to make sure that this happens beside the roadblocks, it actually led to a positive change.
Thank you, Gorian. Nebi, your turn.
Thank you, Sanya. I mean, there have been many lessons that we have learned, and all what we heard, they have been very good ones. But I want to focus perhaps on three critical ones in terms of how did we go and what did we learn when we started to implement our digital transformation journey. I would say the first one is on strategy alignment. I mean, as you know, initiatives for digital transformation need to be aligned with an overall business or government strategy. And one of the most differentiating things that I have seen between early and maturing digital organization is having an articulated digital strategy. So since day one, we made sure here at Green Climate Fund that we have full alignment between the two strategies. I think the takeaway here, what I see, is to figure out your business strategy or your business model before you invest in technology to avoid working on the wrong thing. So we also need to make sure that people really understand what it is that we are trying to solve. So I believe that would be the first one. The second one, the second lesson is probably in culture, and I think this is the most critical one. I can say from my experiences that culture is probably the most conservative force in any organization. Culture can be a competitive advantage or disadvantage. I mean, for example, Green Climate Fund is a new institution, as it was mentioned, which is about 5 years in operational existence. Within the teams that I have been working and heading, we still have an adaptive culture that is fast-moving, innovative, willing to experiment. And we have used all this for our advantage. So if you think about it, culture plays a key role when it comes to innovation. And focusing on innovation and flexibility as core values, as well as behaviors, I think is important. And if you ask, why do many successful firms fail? I mean, it wouldn't be hard to guess that culture is probably one of the reasons. I mean, somebody once said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And this doesn't mean that strategy isn't important. I believe the real challenge is to link strategy to culture. So if we are going to transform systems, institutions, businesses, organizations, or even a simple business process, we have got to understand the culture so that we can use it for our competitive advantage. And the third takeaway, I would say, is understanding the digital trends, because they are very important today. They drive a successful digital transformation. And because digital trends include not only emerging technologies that we hear all the time, but also fundamental business model changes that are driving the digital transformation. So the entire phenomenon of digital transformation is not just digitalization, automation, but also the disruptive and innovative business models behind it. So I would really conclude by saying that digitalization has the potential to drive an inclusive growth. And it can also address the challenge of sustainable development, the digital divide, through these transformational changes.
Thank you, Nebi, and thanks to all the panelists. Now I have a tough moment because we are a little bit over time, but I do have questions that are gathered from the audience, from the participants prior, collected by my dear colleagues. And I'm going to conduct an experiment because you here don't have a choice. We've been sitting all the time. Those who are virtually, they can at least go make some coffee. So how about a raise of hands? I think my mic is falling. I will need some assistance. How about a raise of hands for those who still want to go for 10 minutes more to do a round of questions that are coming from the audience? Can we have? Okay. So I think we have the overwhelming majority, but let me turn the order. So I'm going to start from Nebi. If you were to undertake a similar transformation in a public institution, how would you approach it? What would your 3 key actions be?
Well, this is a great question, Sanya, and I would like to try build upon my digital transformation experience that I have been talking about. So, as I said, Green Climate Fund might be a somewhat unusual, as the fund does not belong to a single governmental administration, but rather almost 200 of them. So we are still a non-profit public sector institution. So I think the transformation can also be achieved in a public institution, regardless whether it's a government, non-profit, or any other institutional type. And as I mentioned earlier, the three takeaways we had from our experience, like mainly culture, strategy alignment, and understanding the digital trends are foundational and critical success factors in any transformational journey. But if we have to go back, the question was about what are the actions? I mean, I think the first action I would take is to get a full buy-in and support from the top management, executive leadership, whatever we are talking about. We need to have a clear vision. We need to communicate that vision to the citizens, but as well as other stakeholders. We only always think about citizens, but there are other stakeholders such as tourists, investors, non-resident business owners that would benefit from any governmental transformational work. So we would also need to show how motivation, engagement, and job safety will increase when working with modern tools and systems. And I believe this, as you earlier said, would bring productivity gains and cost reduction. The second action, I would be saying that it's all about communication, because we need to communicate all the time. And probably you have heard over and over again that we need to over-communicate. And I believe there is no such a thing as over-communication, because we need to build excitement across the institution about the fact that we will be a win-win change for everyone involved. So it's incredibly important to over-communicate, which will not only ensure that the message gets through, but help solve and resolve a lot of challenges that institutions run into from miscommunication. And if I have to say the third action, it would be about being very professional with planning and particularly with execution, because no transformation can succeed unless, I believe, it is guided by a strategy and a plan that addresses 360-degree view of risks, resources, structures, talent pool, and of course, the technology trends.
Thank you, Nebi. So as I said, I'm going to go the other way. Gorjan, for you, it's a bit of a longer question, so bear with me. Air care proved very successful in putting a spotlight on the country's air pollution issue and creating public pressure towards the government by raising awareness on the seriousness of the problem. What is the next step? How can we build further on this increased awareness to affect actual and sustainable change?
Right. What I tell a lot of people is that air care is built on three foundations. We want to inform people, just like we've been doing so far, and all the other air quality apps also do, but we don't want to stop there. We also want to educate and empower people. The idea is that now that you have this information, the question is, what do you do with it? I know it's polluted outside right now, but what with it? A lot of people locally still feel powerless to do anything about a problem that they can't even wrap their head around, and it's like, how will I now change anything outside? So that is the goal of the app. We want to not only inform you, help educate you about the risks of air quality, like what really is going on with your health when you go outside and you breathe all of these toxins in, but also empower you to finally act about this problem that we're facing, either by connecting you to local organizations, local, eco events, workshops, meetings, protests, ways that you can lobby to your local and regional institutions of making an actual green policy change going forward. So the idea is to awaken the activists in everybody that is using the app to finally fulfill the great goal of the app, and that is to not actually need the app in the first place, because the air quality outside would be so great that you can just uninstall and forget about air care.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nina, the question for you is, you have a unique insight in both the government and the private sector. What can the public sector learn from the private sector regarding the digitalization of services and vice versa?
Uh, I think one of the key strengths of the private sector is the adaptability and the adaptability to change, the adaptability to transform, and this is something that definitely the public sector can learn from the private sector. But I think it's not only about what it can learn, but it's about, for us as a country, as a society, being aware that this crisis actually revealed the weaknesses we have been having for many years, and we have seen that we are not ready for digital transformation. We have not been investing in the past years. As we have heard, Estonia launched its digital residency in 2002. Israel started with their strategy 10, 15 years ago, if I understood well, with the startup strategy, and they're seeing the results today. They were patient, and as we heard from Nebi, their fund was preparing for digital transformation for 5 years in order for them to utilize it and put it on fast forward during the 2-3 months COVID. The same happened with e-commerce. E-commerce boomed and has reached the forecasted level of 3- and 5-year growth in some countries, but these are countries that were ready, that were developed, that had digital skills. And we have also heard from Mr. Singer, the author of the Startup Nation book. He shared with us a new example of an innovative solution, and he said that be the first country, take this solution and test all your citizens for COVID with this voice app that has been invented and that is about to be launched. And if we are excited and say, yeah, let's be the first country, but let's face it, we have the lowest digital skills of our nation comparing to all other countries. So we are not a country that is ready to apply this new innovative solution. And we have to be aware that we need to start, we should have started many years ago, but it's better sooner rather than later. And we need to seriously invest in the digital skills and digitalization and the readiness, so that once other shock or opportunity presents, we are ready to exploit the opportunities. So I think that the public sector did its best with the resources it could, with the given field and ecosystem that there was. But this has made us aware that governments need to be fast, agile, adaptable, need to be fast and curious, as I said. And we need good leadership. We need people, as Costa mentioned, talent, to be able to attract these people to be able to do the change from the inside. And these are all the strengths of the private sector. So I think good cooperation and having all these key strengths and understanding that constant change and adaptation and learning are inevitable for progress, I think that's the only way when we will be set for progress and fast forward growth and digitalization.
Thank you, Nina, very much. Costa. Innovation Fund is promoting innovation, including digitalization, in the private sector. How can Innovation Fund be the catalyzer of innovation and digitalization in the public sector in North Macedonia, of which it is part?
I think if you ask me, the fund should manage also the innovation of the entire government sector. Just an idea that I have, but we have an amazing project actually with UNDP, which has proven successful and is actually a good example of how we can do things together. We did the digitalization of services in 3 municipalities, and hopefully we will continue this. I'm really thankful for that because it was really an amazing project, and I proved that by using our resources and your resources, the effect will be much bigger than we doing it by ourselves or you doing it by yourselves. I think the government is doing quite a lot of interesting things. Maybe it's not as fast as we would like to, but as Nina knows, we will soon launch the MasterCard digital signature. I think very soon we will have all the government offices, everything that we need from, everything that a citizen will need in one portal. We are working heavily on this. And as I said previously, we have to do this together. It's not a question whether we will digitalize or not. Hello, we will have to digitalize. The question is whether it's going to be good or not good. As I mentioned in my previous answer, I think the government seriously needs to increase the budgeting for digitalization of the government institutions. And number 2, which we are working together in the fund, is to involve startups into this digital process. Because Most of the ministries' institutions have budgets for innovation, but the ministries are usually, big, bureaucratic. So, for example, we have instruments in the fund that we can use to get a digital solution for institution much faster, maybe even more transparent, and also to involve startups. So, as I mentioned in my previous 3 answers, we don't have time. We have to do this ASAP. I think there's a commitment from the government, there's a commitment from all of our international partners, UNDP, the British Embassy is investing heavily also in digitalization of the public sector, and I honestly believe that in the next 6 to 12 months we will see a huge change, because it's a must. As I said, it's not a question of whether we want to do it or not. We have to do it, we are doing it, we have to do it faster, and we have to do it better, because at the end of the day, the citizens deserve it, and we are living in a world, it's a fourth industrial revolution, and sometimes our citizens have problems to get the birth certificate. So these are the things that we have to change, and we are changing, and of course, we will have to do it together.
Thank you very much. This is wrapping up a fantastic, I would say, very inspiring talk from my dear panelists, amazing people. As I said at the beginning, I think we can only consider them more amazing after all that we've heard from them. But I think the point to conclude is that normal people, right? So the people are the power. You just need to use your own resources, the data, and connect with other people, and everything is doable and possible. I think with this empowering message, I would like to close with many thanks for you to staying until the end, and to all of those who are still listening to us. Many thanks to the panelists, and many thanks to my dear colleagues who have helped very much with the organization of everything. To the Accelerator Lab, please. Ardita, Ivan, Lazar, and Igor, stand up. My dear colleagues who are behind all of this great work, great support, the adventures are ahead of us all with you, and we look forward to partnership with amazing people to do the amazing things. Thank you very much.